Okay. So I have to glance over there every once in a while and see if everybody's in the chat. Alrighty, this is Tom. This is Tom's Radio Room Show, and I've got a very, very unusual radio here. And I've got Scott. He restores these kinds of radios, and he also has a YouTube channel. And I'm going to turn it over to Scott and let him tell you a little about himself and his radios.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I'm Scott. I'm up in Toronto. Beautiful sunny day here, like ideal weather. Yeah, I've been collecting radios since I was a kid. I've got quite a few. I've got similar ones to the one Tom has on his bench here, made in the 1920s, battery operated. I have a lot of shortwave radios. I do shortwave listening. The radio I use mostly nowadays is the IC 8600 ICOM that I bought. Geez, it's going on almost 3 years. I think I've had that radio, or maybe 2 years when it came out. It's a great little radio. It's sitting on top of my old R9500, which doesn't get much use since I got the new radio, and then I got a bunch of tube radios as well. But yeah, I've been online friends with Tom for a few years with radio interests and everything. And Tom's got a great collection of radios down there in Florida too. He's got a stormy day down there in Florida, unlike the sunny day we have here in Toronto. But anyways, Tom wanted me to join him here and talk about this old radio that he's got borrowed from a friend of his.
Alrighty. Okay, so here we have under here. This is from Jeff King. You've seen my recent videos of radios he's been loaning me. This is very, very unusual. So here we go. There it is. Does that look like a radio or some kind of a magic medicine thing that cures everything? So Scott's going to tell us what this is. I have no idea. I've seen similar ones, but Scott's the expert. He's like he says, he's got a lot of radios in this time frame. He restores radios like this, and so he's going to tell us a little bit about it.
Okay, well, Tom's already identified that the tube is an 1A tube, so that was the most common type of tube they used back in those days for the radios. It's a simple triode with a directly heated cathode, and the filament runs off of normally 5 volts. And the plate voltage, you can run those tubes anywhere from, I have a Crosley pup that will run with 18 volts, or 27 volts, three 9-volt batteries in series for the plate, and it'll run just fine. I think you can run these tubes up to close to 100 volts without a problem. So this radio Tom's got here, it looks like a typical simple one-tube regenerative radio. So you have the 2 coils, the big coil with the slider for the tuning, and the one at the right-hand side is normally hooked up as the they called it a tickler, and it puts the one coil inside the other to get feedback for the regeneration. And over on the left, he's got a couple of controls there. One of them will be the rheostat for the filament, because normally these things would run off of a 6-volt car battery type of a lead acid battery, and when it was new, you didn't need to run the rheostat so high, so it would be reducing the filament current, and then as the battery voltage drooped as it got used up, they would crank it up, but it also would operate as a bit of a gain control. And then there's another rheostat there that it might be also being used for the regeneration feedback. So somewhere in there should be a grid leak resistor. Usually back in those days, they were a weird looking thing like a fuse with a piece of carbonized paper inside it to get like a 1 or 2 megohm resistance. And they were replaceable. They looked like they were in a little fuse holder because they were very unreliable.
I do see a spot right there where something was. So I don't know if that might have been the fuse holder or something. There's a drilled hole there that something screwed into.
Yeah, it could have been lost over the years from back when this was built, because a lot of people over the years maybe had no idea what this was, and or it's very easy to take a modern 1 or 2 megohm resistor and just put it in the circuit, and it'll work just fine, reliably, and you lose the authenticity of having the old carbonized paper grid leak resistor, but it'll still work.
And there's a piece of tape down here with a bunch of handwritten symbols. Starting over here, it says ANT, I assume for antenna. And then the next one is GR4, I believe. And then
That might be the ground. That may be the ground for the antenna.
Oh, okay. Okay. And then this one, it's kind of scribbled. It looks like B minus, A plus, B plus.
Yeah, so you probably have the common ground there for the batteries, and then the A battery for the filament, and then the B battery for the plate. And then the plate supply normally goes through the headphone coil and then to the plate of the tube. And that way the plate current is going through the headphone coil just like it would be on the primary of a audio output transformer, and then the varying plate current is what drives the audio into the headphones.
And then the other two are marked pH for headphones, I guess.
Yeah.
And then there's this one by itself, which has a marking B minus.
Right, there you go. So then on the left, you got the B plus. It probably goes through the phones, and then to the B minus, like via the tube. It'll be the plate current will be going through the tube and then through the phones to the B minus.
And what frequencies would this tune?
Well, the ones I have are similar to the modern AM broadcast band, and they almost always have a range switch, because the tuning range on them was very, very narrow. That looks like what you've got on the end there on the tickler coil. You just choose how many windings you've got in there to give you the frequency range. And you slide that thing in and out, and that gives you the feedback into the regeneration. So normally you would slide that in, and the signal would get stronger and stronger, and then suddenly the tube would break into oscillation, and it would just start kind of a shriek, and you'd have to pull it back out to pop it out of oscillation. And that was annoying to the neighbors. If your radio went into oscillation, it became a transmitter, and it would wipe out the neighbor's reception.
And this is about 24 inches long. See my scale down here. Would this be a kit or made from a manufacturer? I mean, come from a manufacturer?
Well, it might be a kit. I mean, it does look a little bit beyond what the normal do-it-yourselfer would be able to do with the nice woodworking and those really nice, those coils aren't the kind of thing a normal do-it-yourselfer would end up. It would look a little more ragged, I would think, the normal do-it-yourselfer. So that might be a kit that you buy the parts and put it together yourself. You save a lot of money. Because you'd have to be a pretty handy guy to have the woodworking skills and the wiring, the winding. Look at how nice that coil is. How's the average guy in 1920 going to wind a coil like that?
Yep. And then this is all the wood's nicely formed. So, but it kind of looks like a kit, that maybe it just came in all these pieces and you assembled the pieces.
Yeah, that sounds like it's very likely. I mean, Crosley, he started out just selling the parts for people to make radios, and when it caught on really, really popular, Crosley started making radios.
Yeah, because I don't see any plaque or anything with a manufacturer's name on anything.
Is there anything on the bottom of it?
No, I looked before, and there's nothing on the bottom.
Because sometimes on these kind of radios, you'll see wiring on the bottom. I have a Atwater Kent Type 10C, I think it is, radio, the kind with the 3 dials and the little island with the tubes on it. And all of its wiring is down underneath on the bottom.
Yeah.
So on the top, it looks really, really clean.
And it's in pristine condition. All the wires are nice and clean, and there's no scratches on the wood at all.
I think it's pretty rare to find a radio of this vintage in such condition. It might have been something that was made in more modern times out of the parts that were available from the time, but either way, it's a pretty amazing thing to find.
Yeah, and this little wood contraption here it's pretty unusual itself.
Is that brass rod connected to electrically to something?
No. Nope. Which makes you kind of wonder what the function is, because what it appears is there's a little band underneath this that touches the surface here.
Right.
But there's no electrical contacts at all at either end here.
Well, maybe there was a wire on the brass rod that's long since fallen off because nobody noticed or whatever. Because you would think there'd have to be a contact sliding along there to vary the coil.
Let's see. No, all I see is that underneath this thing is a brass loop, but I don't see.
Yeah, there could have easily been a piece of wire that they just sort of pinched under the end of the brass rod when it was screwed down, and since it came out, still a pretty cool piece of equipment for.
It is amazing. And
it's like that radio. Have you been looking at that radio that Jim's been working on, that Victor talking machine?
No, I have not.
He's got a 1929 Victor R32 radio, and it's exactly the same one as I've got here in my living room that I bought when I was in high school for $5 at my grandmother's church rummage sale.
Wow.
And the thing is amazing. I mean, it's 1929.
Yeah.
And I asked Jim, I think, what do you think if the men that built this radio would be more shocked that 40 years after they built this radio, men would walk on the moon, or that 50 years after men walked on the moon, this radio would still be working?
Yeah.
Because it's 90 years old now.
Yeah. And unfortunately, I didn't get any notes from Jeff, who's the owner of this. Usually he has notes on all the radios he gives me. This one, he didn't have any notes, but I'm sure he will put comments on this video of the information he knows about it.
Yeah, he might have picked it up somewhere from somebody who didn't know what it was. It could be a very long time since it's ever been functioning.
Yeah, but it has been well kept.
Oh yeah, it's a pretty cool piece.
All righty. And Scott, your YouTube channel is?
The Scotty TR6 is my channel. It's a very, very small channel. Nothing like you have.
But you have some very, very unique radios, like the one you showed at the beginning and the other ICOM, that we still need to do a hangout and you show us your brand new radio, that new ICOM.
Sure, sometime. No problem.
Okay, let me see if I can see it. Check the chat room. Oh. Jeff, the owner of this, said that yes, it was homemade. So it probably was a kit.
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like, because it doesn't look like it's the kind of parts that a do-it-yourselfer would build.
And I don't know if it's added later or not, but notice nylon tie wraps.
Oh yeah, for sure. Those would be more modern.
They could have been added later, but I'm thinking that, and maybe like you thought, Scott, maybe it was a kit that was still in the box and somebody later on put it together.
That's a good point, Tom. Could very well be the case. That would explain why it's in such good shape.
Right.
Yeah, but those wires, they do look a little more modern than what you'd have in a 1920 series era radio.
Yeah, that's another good point, that these are not the typical wires you would see in an old radio. I think these are actually plastic insulation on them.
Yeah, because back in those days, the wiring is usually like got rubber insulation and then a cloth covering to protect the rubber.
Yeah.
Because the rubber was used for electrical insulation, but it wasn't very physically tough, and so they put the cloth coating on it to physically protect the rubber. And those usually get pretty like if the guy had this kit, that rubber wire probably would have been brittle and he wouldn't be able to use it, so he used the modern wires maybe.
Right. Let me see if I can carefully take this tube out. So there's the tube. Oops, get it in the camera correctly here. It's made by Sylvania, and it's an SX-201A. 4 prongs.
Yeah, the OT1A tubes are pretty common for the era, and the number at the beginning usually has to do with the manufacturer, like 201 being Sylvania. There's 301s, there's 401s, and it's the same spec tube, but from a different manufacturer.
And what is this tube?
It's just a triode. It's a simple triode with a directly heated cathode. Like the filament is the cathode.
And there's only 4
It's only 4 pins, yeah.
pins.
Get two for the heater. The big pair are usually the heater, and then the other 2 are the grid and the plate. So usually 2 of the pins are a little bit bigger than the other ones.
Yep, just slightly. Alrighty. I'm going to lay this down for the time being. I'll put it back in later. Again, I thank Jeff for loaning me these radios. And this was quite unusual. And I was incorrect on my previous video. I said I had 2 radios left to review. Actually, there was 3. And this is the 3rd one. So we still have 2 more radios from Jeff. One is a Grundig, and we had one guess of what it might be, which was wrong. So you can continue.
You mean it's an old Grundig or a modern one?
It's a modern one. Very pocket radio.
Oh, pocket radio.
Yep.
Well, I have a little Grundig shortwave radio called Yacht Boy 400 that I've had for decades. Yeah, it's a nice little portable. This
is newer than that.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unique. I'm not going to say any more because I'm going to try to hold off until I actually do the video.
Yeah. Well, there were a lot of weird radios that were never sold in North America. Normally, they were for the European market or the Asian market, and we never saw them. And then when we see one, they seem strange to us.
Yeah. Well, this one definitely was for the North American market. It was unique. He did sell a lot of them, but you don't see too many used ones. That's the key. All righty. You got anything else, Scott, before we wrap it up?
No, that's been very interesting, Tom. Thanks for including me in your little review here. It's amazing to see such a radio that's in that kind of shape. I mean, holy cow. I imagine that's worth a lot of money.
It probably is. Okay. Thanks, Scott.
Okay. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, everybody, for watching. Thanks, Jeff, for loaning me this. I'm going to put it back in the packing that he had it in. And have a great day. Bye-bye.